It's 6 p.m. on a Thursday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with the headlines. With early voting for the general election set to start tomorrow, Korea's main political parties customize their campaign efforts with their target voters in mind. Korea's Food Ministry announces a 4-year plan to lower national sugar intake in accordance with the government's goal of lowering obesity and diabetes rates. Samsung Electronics posts better than expected earnings in Q1, an increase of more than 10% in operating profits, with sales spiking almost 4%. The tech titan's new flagship phone is believed to have provided the boost it needs. Korea's political parties are trying to woo as many voters as possible ahead of a 2-day early voting period that starts Friday. It's the first time early voting will be used for a general election, and all eyes are on the turnout, which could have big implications for the election outcome. Kim Young-gil starts us off.
The country's 3 main political parties are scrambling to garner public support before early voters head to the polls on Friday to try to put some space between themselves and the competition. Early voters can cast their ballots from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Korea time on Friday and Saturday at one of the 3,500 polling stations nationwide. During the early voting period, the ruling Saenuri Party is targeting voters in their 50s and 60s. The main opposition Minju Party of Korea is targeting people in their 20s and 30s. And the fledgling centrist People's Party is targeting undecided voters and those fed up with both of the leading parties. However, the infighting that affected all of the parties during the candidate selection process has caused voters to become disenchanted with politics, which could spell trouble for the opposition parties. In Korea, low voter turnout typically hurts the liberals rather than the conservatives. Korea's election watchdog first adopted their early voting system during the April by-election in 2013 as part of an effort to boost the voter turnout rate. The first time early voting was used, turnout was 4.9%, but by the 2014 June local elections, it had risen to 11.5%. This is the first time early voting will be used for a general election, and if turnout reaches 15%, then political analysts expect the total voter turnout for this election to reach 60%. During the early voting period, candidates are prohibited from campaigning within 100 meters of polling stations, and the election watchdog has vowed to clamp down on slander between rivals. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Moving on, President Park Geun-hye's visit to Mexico gave Korea's medicine sector a boost for future growth. The presidential office of Cheongwade said Thursday that a total of 8 MOUs ranging from health insurance to telemedicine were sealed during her visit earlier this week, and that Mexico showed great interest in Korea's IT developments in telemedicine. Seoul explained telemedicine is indispensable for Mexico as its vast land size makes it difficult to equip every town with medical infrastructure to provide with adequate health care to those who need it. Mexico is the second biggest health market in Latin America after Brazil at $23.5 billion, and Korea's pharmaceutical industry expects these agreements to boost its exports to Mexico by at least $8 million a year. The Korean government has declared a war on sugar in a fight to tackle rising obesity and diabetes rates in the country. Korea's Ministry of Food and Drug Safety announced a 4-year plan on Thursday to lower national sugar intake levels to less than 10% of a person's daily diet. On average, that works out to about 17 sugar cubes a day. Studies have shown that people who consume more than that are 66% more likely to have high blood pressure and 41% more likely to get diabetes. The government will also make sugar labeling clearer and put warnings on products with high sugar content. The information will start appearing on cereals and products containing cocoa by next year. And along the way, perhaps Korea will be able to formulate an effective strategy for combating the problem, which seems to be something the rest of the world sorely needs. Because according to recent studies by the WHO, the number of adults with diabetes has quadrupled worldwide to 422 million in less than 40 years. The leading cause is above average body weight and obesity. The reports point out as of 2014, 1 in 3 adults over 18 years of age were overweight and 1 in 10 were obese. Diabetes is a lifelong condition that could lead to blindness, kidney failure, heart attacks, and stroke. It killed 3.7 million people in 2012, and 43% of the deaths occurred in people under 70 years old. Margaret Chan, the WHO's Director General, said the findings showed an urgent need to address unhealthy diets and lifestyles around the world. Turning to the tech realm, Samsung Electronics posted stronger than expected earnings in first 3 months of this year. Analysts mainly attribute the spike to bumper sales of its new smartphone models, the Galaxy S7 and S7 Edge. Kim Min-ji has more on the tech giant's earnings surprise.
Samsung Electronics posted better than expected earnings in the first quarter of this year. According to the company's earnings guidance, operating profits stood at roughly $5.7 billion during the January to March period, up more than 10% from a year ago. Sales edged up almost 4% on year to over $42 billion. The operating profit estimate beats the recent market consensus of about $4.8 billion. Analysts attribute the surprise earnings to the release of Samsung's new flagship smartphone models.
Sales of the Galaxy S7 were much better than market expectations. Also, sales of Samsung's premium chips are expected to have offset the losses of falling chip prices.
On top of that, Samsung is believed to have benefited from favorable foreign currency conditions. A relatively strong greenback allowed for greater profits, as transactions of components are made using the dollar, while for finished goods, it means products gain price competitiveness in overseas markets. Samsung will release its finalized earnings later this month. If the results are in line with its estimates, it would mark a turnaround in earnings for the tech giant's mobile division, which had been weighed down by stiff competition from Apple and up-and-coming Chinese rivals. For the second quarter, analysts expect Samsung to stay on track for recovery on the back of seasonal demand, as well as more orders for IT devices in overseas markets, which will likely cancel out marketing costs from its mobile division. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Amid the ongoing Panama Papers scandal exposing millions of records of offshore entities, a Korean industry tracker has revealed that billions of dollars from tax havens have made their way into the Korean stock market. Oh Soo-young shares with us Chaebol.com's latest findings.
More than $2.3 billion. That's the amount that flowed into Korea's equity market from major tax havens around the world, according to Thursday's data from Chaebol.com. Based on Tuesday's market close, the industry tracker found the amount of tax haven capital accounts for more than 6% of all foreign investment in the Korean stock market. And where did the money come from? Most of it, or more than $870 million, was tracked to the Virgin Islands, followed by Bermuda, the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. But that's only half the picture. If suspected tax havens such as Singapore, Hong Kong, the Netherlands and Ireland are included, the amount of capital from offshore havens is an estimated $13 billion. Some analysts say that Korean nationals, or the so-called black-haired foreigners, are among these foreign investors who set up offshore shell companies to keep their assets under wraps. This comes amid the Panama Papers scandal, which leaked millions of records on offshore accounts. Korea's Financial Supervisory Service has vowed to investigate the 195 Koreans on the list to see if they violated the Foreign Exchange Transaction Act. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has signaled that an interest rate hike in April is unlikely. According to minutes from the Fed's March meeting released on Wednesday, some Fed officials said a cautious approach to raising rates would be prudent, while others pointed out raising the target range in April could signal an inappropriate sense of urgency. The minutes also indicated that some officials want to raise rates as soon as April if incoming economic data remained consistent with their expectations for moderate growth in output. Last week, Fed Chair Janet Yellen said the central bank will proceed cautiously in adjusting policy given the risks to the outlook. The Fed's next meeting will be held on April 26th and 27th. It's been around a week since world leaders gathered in Washington for the fourth and final nuclear security summit in Washington. And today, meetings on North Korea's nuclear threat and other global nuclear issues were held here in Seoul. Kwon So-ah outlines what was discussed.
In the wake of North Korea's fourth nuclear test earlier this year and growing concerns that another test may already be in the works for later this year, South Korea and the International Atomic Energy Agency sat down for high-level talks at Seoul's Foreign Ministry on Thursday, focused on ways to effectively deal with Pyongyang's nuclear threats.
Safeguards issues, non-proliferation issues in the Korean Peninsula are of most importance for our delegation and our work. Our cooperation has been excellent over the past years, and the safeguards activities are improving in an excellent manner.
Both sides have had broad discussions on effective measures against global nuclear proliferation, ways to strengthen nuclear safety measures through the IAEA, and ways to promote the peaceful use of nuclear energy.
Promoting the peaceful use of nuclear material is the main goal of the nearly 170 member state international organization within the United Nations that was inspired by Atoms for Peace, the 1953 speech by U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower. The consultations with South Korean officials began in 2013, with this round being the fourth. According to Seoul's foreign ministry, the meeting is expected to contribute to the efforts made at the Nuclear Security Summit in Washington a week ago and comes ahead of an IAEA ministerial meeting on nuclear security later this year to be chaired by Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The U.S. Secretary of State slammed Donald Trump's recent remarks that South Korea and Japan should develop their own nuclear weapons for self-defense. He added that the Republican frontrunner's comments contradicts decades-old American foreign policy and threaten global peace. Park Jong-hong has more on John Kerry's response to the always controversial former reality show star's wild ideas.
The top U.S. diplomat has blasted Donald Trump. John Kerry says Trump's suggestion that South Korea and Japan fend for themselves with nuclear weapons grossly violates peace and stability.
I can't think of anything that would be more volatile, more contrary to peace and stability of the region, more.
In an interview with broadcaster PBS this week, Kerry noted that countries around the world are gravely concerned about the Republican frontrunner, and that when he travels, he is often asked questions like, "What has happened in the United States? What has happened to your politics?" He added that Trump's nuclear armament suggestion goes completely against the commitment of every president since World War II, which has been to try and minimize the risk of nuclear weapons. The billionaire property developer told the New York Times last month the U.S. is no longer rich enough to defend other countries and suggested allowing Seoul and Tokyo to go nuclear. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
North Korea continues to promote its 7th ruling party Congress expected to be held in early May, but due to the international sanctions imposed on the regime, it looks like Pyongyang is already having a hard time raising enough money. For details, let's turn to Connie Kim.
There is just about a month left until North Korea's ruling Workers' Party Congress, and Pyongyang is promoting the event by touting the third one. North Korea's Dodong Shinmun newspaper said Thursday Pyongyang had declared its independence and established the foundation for a socialist society during the 7-day event in 1956. It added the North will use the upcoming party congress to lay out the achievements of its revolution and success of its ongoing construction projects. South Korea's National Intelligence Service expects the convention to start on May 7th, but the preparations already seem to have hit a few bumps. With the recent UN sanctions imposed on Pyongyang, North Korean restaurants operating overseas have started to feel the pinch. Radio Free Asia reported Thursday that a fifth of the 15 North Korean restaurants in Dandong, China's largest border city with the North, have gone out of business since the sanctions were imposed last month. 3 out of the 6 North Korean restaurants operating in the Cambodian capital, Phnom Penh, have already reportedly gone out of business as well. This is mainly because South Korea urged its citizens not to visit the restaurants in order to deprive the North of the funds, which are widely suspected of being funneled into the regime's nuclear weapons development program. And in another example of the North's ongoing fundraising efforts, Radio Free Asia also reported the North had opened a new hospital in Tanzania in early February. North Korea is expected to continue these activities, but whether it'll raise enough for a successful political event is doubtful, with sanctions cutting off the North's supply of cash. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
South Korea is trying to win permission from the U.S. to use the country's military GPS that will enhance South Korea's ground-to-ground guided missiles to counter North Korea's newly developed 300mm multiple launch rocket system. According to Seoul's Defense Acquisition Program Administration on Thursday, the negotiations are already underway, but the approval for the sale from Washington might take some time, as the process is complex due to security reasons. Seoul plans to develop ground-to-ground guided missiles by 2018, which have a range of 120 kilometers, and implement the defense system by the following year. A team of scientists from the U.S. and Germany has discovered an enormous black hole with a mass equivalent to 17 billion suns. The black hole is located in the center of a galaxy that is 200 million light years away from Earth, a region of space where nothing, including light, can escape because of the strong gravitational effects. The scientists speculate that a collision of two black holes created the supermassive cosmic entity. The discovery was published in the latest edition of Nature magazine. That's all from us for now. As always, thank you for watching.